This country is founded by people who were into aliens, man. George Washington, man, he was in a cult.
From out of space comes a runaway planet, hurtling between the Earth and the Moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. Man's civilization is cast in ruin. 2,000 years later, Earth is reborn. A strange new world rises from the old. A world of savagery, super science, and sorcery.
What we need to do is put the art pedal to the floor and understand that this is art. We are involved in some kind of enormous piece of performance art called Western civilization. And, you know, it's been a C- performance so far, and they're just about to reach out with the hook and drag us off stage unless we begin pulling rabbits out of the hat pretty furiously. Art is poised for this, but art is ambivalent because the society is ambivalent. That's why meetings like this, where you actually hear it said, the sooner the better. The clock is ticking. This is not a test. There will not be a retry. You know, this is the window of opportunity between the unknown and eternity. If not taken, then the entire enterprise could be lost.
Science is in an interesting period right now. It's actually got to a stage where it's moving at a truly incredible rate. I mean, never before do I remember day-to-day discoveries. Week to week was something, month to month was pretty average, but day to day now, science is changing. Scientists say there's nothing that we're working on that seems to follow the rules and the laws that we were dealing with yesterday. New things are coming, so even the most notable researchers and scientists and writers in the mainstream frontline are now sounding more like science fiction writers used to. And their work and their discoveries is in fact seeming a little preposterous to that breed of people whose vision is constrained perhaps by what they perceive to be the limits of plausible achievement.
By people who were in the aliens, man. George Washington, man, he was in a cult, and the cult was in the aliens.
The amazing thing about these monatomic elements is that they're not actually a new discovery. We seem to have caught up with them again, but we seem to know about them a long, long time ago. We can go back to some very ancient texts. We can go back to Egypt, we can go back to Mesopotamia, we can go back even to the Bible itself and find lots and lots of ancient references to magical powders which actually seem to do all of the things that scientists are now telling us that these are capable of. It called these powders, which were associated with gold in Mesopotamia, they were called shamana. In Egypt they were called mufkut. So they had all these strange names. The Alexandrians called it the paradise stone. It's not a stone, it's a powder, but they called it the paradise stone. And in all cases, whether it was shamana, mufkut, paradise stone or whatever, they all said this is a mysterious powder of projection. Powder of projection, and the various cultures were unanimous on that particular description. They said it has powers of levitation, powers of transmutation, of teleportation. It seemed to be a vehicle by which they would communicate with gods. It was something to do with the afterlife of the Egyptian pharaohs. And they also said it was a key to active longevity. Because of this, people were able to live a long time, particularly those whose life it was part of, the high priests, kings, pharaohs. The Egyptian pyramid texts, they talk about the material, it's called mufkut. The pyramid texts come from the 5th dynasty tomb at Saqqara of King Unas. Here is described something called the field of mufkut. This is interesting because it's moved into modern science again. The field of mufkut. material was meant to have a feeling around it or about it, or that it was associated with it, was very magical and very powerful, and was the field in which the pharaohs would communicate with the gods. It was the field that determined their final gateway to the afterlife. The stories of this field turn up earlier than the 5th dynasty. They turn up in the 4th dynasty. They turn up in the 3rd and the 2nd. It's very interesting that we've never discovered the bodies of any of those old kings and pharaohs. We've discovered what we think might be their tombs. We've never discovered their bodies or their mummies, but those that we've got are from a much later time. Somehow or other, they seem to have vanished into thin air. And the texts tell us they were sent into the field of Nofret. Intriguing. This is a portion of an old Egyptian temple. An interesting story behind this temple. The anniversary of its discovery, the 100th anniversary, is next year. It was discovered in 1904, but it was not discovered in Egypt. Back in 1904, the Egyptologist Thundar, British archaeologist, went on an expedition into the land of Sinai to map the country for the Egypt exploration fund. And that was the land apparently where Moses had taken the Israelites and they'd crossed this land of Sinai to get from Egypt into the promised land. And en route there they stopped at this amazing mountain. And this was the mountain where Moses saw the burning bush. It was where he received the 10 Commandments and the book of the law. It was where he seemingly spoke with God and where they built the Ark of the Covenant. And this whole story is full of accounts of fires and all sorts of amazing magical things going on. Anyway, they decided to climb this mountain. They climbed it. 2,500 feet above ground level, they found a great plateau with this temple. An Egyptian temple in the middle of nowhere. 270 feet of it on this plateau. Another equal amount of it back inside a cave that was carved into the mountain. This thing was very important. At the time, they didn't know what they were looking for, they didn't know what they'd found, but they found a secreted hoard of pure, unadulterated white powder, which they said they winnowed and they sieved and they tested. There was nothing there, no residue of anything, just this amazing powder, which he said would disappear into your fingerprints. It was so prized. It seemed to have been an operative workshop, he said, or more of a place of work than worship. The whole thing was dedicated, it seems, to Nofret. Every pharaoh from the 4th dynasty to the 19th dynasty was portrayed there. Every pharaoh had stated things that were written on tablets. This is Pharaoh Amenhotep III. This is an 18th dynasty pharaoh. And the caption, these are all captioned in hieroglyphs. It says, Shebek Hotep brings the noble and precious stone to His Majesty. He is the guardian who brings the bread because he is the great one over the house of gold. So we have this, and we have this fellow here called Shebek Hotep, a treasurer fellow who's holding in the middle of the picture this cone-shaped object. So the association is there, and there are numerous of these. And once that had been discovered in this Sinai temple, the moment Egyptologists went back into Egypt and began to look, they kept finding Nofret cones, bread, like it was about bread, it was about something the kings ingested. They were eating this material that was formed into little cakes. It was a powder. The Old Testament book of Exodus gives us a really good example of this in operation. It took the longest time before anybody even thought to ask a question about this little bit of the story in Exodus. Many of you will know the story. Moses had been up the mountain. He'd come down with the 10 Commandments, and then he broke the tablets because he got terribly angry to see that his brother Aaron had collected all the gold earrings from the Israelites and melted them down and made a golden calf as an idol of worship. And he said, well, that may be the way we used to do things. We don't do that anymore. We have this new culture here that we're part of, and I've just spoken to the Lord of this culture, and we don't worship graven images anymore. And he got very angry. And then it says this, that he took the golden calf, he burnt it with fire, he transposed it with powder, mixed that with water and fed it to the Israelites. Interesting little story. Took gold, burnt it with fire and transposed it into powder. It doesn't work. You heat gold with fire or burn gold with fire, you get molten gold, you don't get powder. Nobody, it seems, thought to ask the question. They use this, it says, to make bread. They could mix it with frankincense, the Bible tells us, and mould little bread cakes, which the most ancient Bible text that we have, the Septuagint, is the old Greek Bible, calls bread of the presence, presumably bread of the presence of God or of something important. Shemana means firestone. This is a relief from that temple, another relief showing a bread presentation again. It was always linked with bread, they were always little conical shapes. We know that from about 2,500 BC, the pharaohs in Egypt, or the kings before they became pharaohs in Greek times, were ingesting the bread cakes of this white powder substance. Only the metallurgical adepts knew the secret of its manufacture. Metallurgical adept? Yep, it's made from metal, that makes sense. The high priest of the temples had a very strange title. The high priests of the Egyptian temples were called the Great Artificers. The Great Artificer is a worker in materials, particularly metal. So that was sort of interesting. It's beginning to link together, and thinking back to Petrie's concept, yeah, these were places of worship, not worship. Temples were not the same as churches. Evolved from the concept. I actually looked in just the English language word etymological dictionary from Oxford University, which traces the origin of words, and lo and behold, I only had to go back 700 years to discover that the word we now use, worship, had a K in the middle of it. It was worship. They used to work for the gods. They didn't use to worship the gods, they used to work for the gods, whoever the gods were. It was said that this was the food of the light body. They said we all have bodies, but we don't just have physical bodies, we have light bodies. And just as we feed our physical bodies, they said, we have to feed our light bodies so that they will be nurtured and grow in the same way. They have to be as fulfilled as the physical body. They call the light body the car. Well, it's interesting because scientists in recent times have actually called this material the light of life. Because it resonates with DNA on the same frequency. It's a light wave. We find lots of references to mufkat. This relief here, this picture, this drawing was actually done by the Russian scholar Emanuel Velikovsky. And he drew this up simply to give us an image of this relief at Karnak, at the Temple of Karnak. This shows the treasures of the Pharaoh Thutmosis, the third. Mufkat in Egyptian law was always portrayed as a cone shape. Now these things sit there in the gold section. And it says underneath, these are gold, but we call them bread. 1450 BC, roughly, Thutmosis founded at this temple at Karnak a college, an institute at the temple of scholarly, priestly types who were called the Great White Brotherhood. The Alexandrians wrote of them and said they were called the Great White Brotherhood because they were absolutely obsessed with the mysterious white powder. And they made some interesting comments. They said that they call it the Paradise Stone, and it has unique qualities in as much as that it can weigh far more than its own original quantity of gold. But even a feather can tip the scales against it. So it can be a lot heavier than the gold it came from, or it can be lighter than a feather. This stuff has the ability to change its weight very, very dramatically. It's always, in the old text, associated with light, with enlightenment, with illumination of some sort. It's a light illumination that seems to have to do with the acquisition of knowledge and wisdom, that sort of illumination and enlightenment.